wanted to do a video tonight. Well, this is still kind of fresh in my mind. And the reason why I'm doing this tonight is I started to get some ridiculous comments on some of my older videos where we start talking about cartridges and stuff like that, of their power and effectiveness. And this is kind of this is something I've been working on for a while, but I haven't really completed all the information I want to compile to make a good video. However, this is a good time to do it because it's kind of fresh in my mind. What this is talking about is kind of a revolver myth thing, and this is covering more or less cherry-picked information. Similar to my last video where I did misrepresentations of the revolver, but this is going to get really into a lot of the cartridge comparisons here. And I'll just kind of go through the information as it comes to mind. But what kind of inspired me to do this is somebody just got done telling me that with the lighter ammunition, a 9mm is just as powerful as a .357 Magnum. A lot of us have to deal with some of this stuff here, and I had to inform them. Well, you know, the original .357 Magnum load, which is still produced by Aguila today, produces about 800 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of a 4-inch barrel. And I had to explain that the 9mm, the highest end 9mm I've ever seen, is 500 foot-pounds, and that doesn't even fall within SAMI specs. So really, it can't compare. And I'm going to make a statement, a very bold statement at the beginning of this video. I know it's going to make some people just lose their minds, but it is the truth. It is 100% truth. The truth is that the 9mm is less powerful than the .38 Special. Somebody's just going to be like, oh, and they're like, yeah. Truth. This is truth. The .38 Special is more powerful than the 9mm. And when I say that, I'm saying it based on SAMI specs. You know, Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturing Institute sets specific data of what a cartridge is. And if you stay within those guidelines, you have officially a cartridge. We have, in comparison to 9mm and .38 Special, we have 9mm and we have 9mm plus P. This is within SAMI specs. There is no 9mm plus P plus. That goes beyond the specifications of SAMI. Therefore, it is not a cartridge. It is not a 9mm cartridge. And same with .38 Special. There is no plus P plus that's officially designated by SAMI, I don't believe, but plus P is. And within those specific specifications, if you have the right overall length, the right bullet diameter, and the right pressure, you have a particular cartridge. And a couple of examples of some very warm .38 Special cartridges are going to be the Buffalo Bore, like what I've shot in the past. That's about 450 foot-pounds out of a 4-inch barrel. We also have Underwood, and they load some 158 grain lead semi-water cutter rounds that are about 550 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of a 4-inch barrel. Pretty significant. The highest up on 9mm plus P before you get to the plus P plus is about 450 foot-pounds of energy out of about a 4.9-inch barrel or so. So that's just an example of sticking to SAMI specs and comparing cartridges for what they really are. Now, I know a lot of people get their information basically by going by what is commonly available. And a lot of commonly available ammo is out there specifically for some very specific reasons. Now, when you go out and you buy any ammo, and I'm going to use this comparison here because it's very relevant to this, because these two cartridges are ones that are really compared a lot. When you go out and you buy ammo, usually you're going to get 9mm ammo that's high-end, standard pressure, low-end plus P. You're going to get 350 to 400 foot-pounds out of most of your defensive ammo out of a full-size 9mm. And when you go and you buy run-of-the-mill plus P of .38 Special, you're going to have somewhere around 300 to 75 foot-pounds out of a full-size gun. And when you get standard pressure, you get around 200 foot-pounds, maybe even less sometimes. And the significant reason why that is like that, there's two significant reasons. One is the .38 Special was never designed as a high-end, high-pressure cartridge, so when it was originally designed in 1898 as black powder cartridge, very low pressured. So because of that, you have to put your SAMI specs back to 1898 basically. So you can't make a cartridge that exceeds that pressure is to label it that cartridge, or else you would blow up older firearms. And the other reason is people kind of expect to have the positive attributes of the 38 Special. It's low recoil, it's easy to shoot, but it's still effective, and that's some of the attributes that people appreciate about the 38 Special. So it's a no-brainer that the ammunition factories, ammunition companies are going to push out a lot of that ammo that meets people's expectations of what they find positive about that cartridge. However, the limits of those cartridges definitely put that 38 Special higher than the 9mm here. So I'll stop talking about that particular cartridge for now here. Another comparison here, when we talk about people having these great caliber debates, is people will start talking about the 44 Magnum, and you have the 44 Magnum lovers, and then you have people comparing the 44 Magnum to the 10mm, and the common stereotypical comment you're going to hear is, well, I'm not going to shoot a 44 Magnum because it's got so much recoil, you can't get a follow-up shot. And it's going to go through the bad guy and go through the wall, go a mile and go through 2 more innocent people, or some ridiculous statement like that. As where all these other cartridges are just absolutely wonderful. And that's a big problem I have, is a lot of people, they make these very big blanket statements. We have that blanket statement of the 38 Special. We also have that blanket statement of something like the 44 Magnum as being an over-penetrator, when the 44 Magnum within SAMI specs can be loaded all the way down a little bit less than 357 Magnums loadings, and it can go up pretty significant power, up to about 1,200 foot-pounds of muzzle energy before you get into plus P. And 44 Mag plus P is not SAMI specified either. So easily within the SAMI specifications, you can have a 44 Magnum that has 600 foot-pounds, you can have one that has 1,200 foot-pounds, and you have bullets all the way down maybe 165 to 180 grain, all the way up to over 240 grains, 300 grains. Big difference here. So yes, there's a significant difference between a 240 grain soft point or full metal jacket that's got 1,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy versus a 180 grain hollow point that has no more energy than a 357 Magnum. So you can't blanket statement certain cartridges. Another one is, and we get into comparisons, people say the 10mm is as good as the 44 Magnum. That's kind of like saying the 9mm is as good as the 357 Magnum. You got about that same difference there. I don't know of any 10mm cartridges within SAMI specs, standard pressure, that are going to get up there to 1,200 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. You're not going to see that with a 10mm. However, what you normally do get is your 44 Magnum ammo. Generally, you get a target ammo that's between 700 and 800 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The 240 grain bullet, somewhere around 1,200 feet per second. And with 10mm, you get ammo that's pretty close. So when you compare those, you can understand some of those blanket statements. You can understand why people get kind of the wrong idea about ballistic limitations, because that's what's widely available. But those are kind of widely available for specific reasons. Most of the 357 Magnum, we'll go back onto this one here, is downloaded. Some 357 Magnum ammo is even as low as 400 foot-pounds out of a 4-inch barrel. Most of it now is about 600 foot-pounds out of a 4-inch barrel. That is very downloaded, though, compared to the original loading. The original loading of the Magnum back in 1934, 1935 was 1,500 feet per second on a 158 grain bullet. Now the standard today of a full house load is the same 1,500 feet per second on a 125 grain bullet. Significant difference, 200 foot-pounds less energy today than what it was originally. So the 357 Magnum is still one of your top handgun cartridges. It pretty much will beat a 10mm. It will beat a 9mm any day of the week. It'll beat pretty much any cartridge here. Another one we get into is blanket statements that the 40 Smith & Wesson is more powerful than the 45 ACP. And that's simply not true. When you look at defensive ammo, whether it's low-end standard pressure, whether it's plus P compared to a high-end loading of the 40, or plus P40s, which isn't SAMI specs anyway, versus plus P45 auto that is, no matter which way you slice it, they're pretty comparable. They're almost identical, pretty much. Most of your 40 and 45 defensive ammo, it's identical in energy. It's just, your 40 is a lighter bullet usually. 45, a little heavier, go a little slower. But you can understand where people are getting the idea that the 40 is more powerful than the 45. It's the same principle behind the 38 Special being where it is most of the time. All the positive attributes that people recognize as being a great thing about the 38 Special, with the standard pressure, they're doing kind of the same thing with the 45 Auto. People expect a 230 grain doing 830 feet per second. So most of the target ammo you get is at that level. It's very downloaded. It's loaded to its original loading way back in 1905 or whenever it was that the 45 Auto was first introduced. So yeah, this is where you kind of get in these cherry picking numbers, where you're cherry picking this to say this cartridge is more powerful, or cherry picking that to say that cartridge is more powerful. And it's really kind of ridiculous and silly. I mean, when we look at the high-end limits of the cartridges out there, there's no mistaking the power limits of each particular cartridge. But to come up with statements saying that 9mm is as good as the 357 Magnum, or the 10mm is as good as the 44 Magnum, and you got just a whole handful of these statements. But you just look at it as a whole. Why is there so much debate over it? I don't know. I guess there's boredom. People they're just kind of bored, or they just want to kind of defend their choice of cartridge. But when we look at all these differences in energy, velocity, whatever, when you look at a lot of the data out there for these different cartridges actually being effective for their intended purpose, they're all pretty similar. You might get a 50% difference in energy or 50% difference in velocity, or you might come up with some huge differences in all these different specifics of these cartridges. When we look at what they actually do, they're a lot smaller of a difference. Differences that only change by 10% statistical data of how effective 2 shots are to stop an attacker. So that's just kind of some examples there of how this gets kind of silly. And there's so much more behind this that people really don't even take into consideration either. People don't really know that all different kinds of bullets are constructed differently. There's all kinds of different lead alloys of different softness. There's different jacket thicknesses. There's all kinds of different ways that bullets can be skewed to perform differently. There's different weights, and those will change how much momentum is hit on a target, and generally that doesn't change a whole lot. But everything is an energy. I mean, energy is translated differently depending on the projectile, what it's made out of, how much momentum it has, how much velocity, even if it has the same amount of energy. Like if you took a 147 grain 9mm and you made it shoot the exact same energy as a 115 grain, they're not going to do the exact same thing on target. That heavier bullet's going to have more resistance to whatever it's hitting, and generally when it's hitting something soft like tissue or something of that nature, it's going to have less destructive force on the bullet, so therefore the bullet's going to continue to kind of truck forward a little bit more, as where the faster bullet's going to kind of shred up a little bit more. So there's a lot more to this debate than meets the eye. However, I don't think really any cartridge out there in modern times has really a bad choice for concealed carry, personal protection, home defense, and whatnot, because you can pretty much, like I said about blanket statements, you can pretty much get a cartridge to fit your need within any of these cartridges. Just like the 38 Special, we get done talking about that. You get ones that are standard pressure loaded down to where you get almost no recoil. You get even good stopping power even on those low end cartridges, because they will penetrate through soft materials very well. They don't expand too much, and they're still going to keep trucking forward with their heavy 158 grain weight or more. They're still going to be pretty effective. As where you can change the the bullet weight down to a lighter bullet in a 38 Special, for example, to 110 grain, push it up to a plus P level, make it have over 300 foot-pounds of energy, and you pretty much match any 9mm out there. And you can take pretty much any cartridge that we've talked about, and you can get a load for it that's going to do pretty much what any other load's going to do. Just like a Gila load I was talking about for the 357 Magnum. 800 foot-pounds of energy. That's more energy than a lot of 44 Magnum loads. So your load selection is of utmost importance, and there is no blanket statement across the board that says this cartridge is bad. I mean, there may be some that you can't really work with much. Typically, the smaller you go, the less you can work with it. If you go to 44 Magnum, you have a whole world of opportunity what you can do with that cartridge. 357, 38 Special, you have a huge selection of what you can do with that cartridge. 45 Auto, you got some, not as much as the Revolver cartridges. 9mm, not so much because it is such a small cartridge. And the lower you go, the less variety you have. But don't make blanket statements if you don't know your stuff. That's just my whole point of this video. And, you know, comparing this to that, this more powerful, that more powerful. Yeah, there is no blanket statement that you can just simply say this is better than this 100% of the time. So that's just my point. That's just some of my thinking for tonight. And tell me what you think. And as always, thanks for watching.